So to get started, what I'm going to do is just orient you as to exactly what it is that you're looking at in the LodeiT interfaces. We've got some key parts of the system, the dashboards being one. The forms here are obviously one of the dashboards, and we'll go through these in a little bit more detail. So we've got dashboards. We've got the client box where you can come and manage your clients. You've got system settings up here, so gear wheel and settings, and we'll go through that. And then obviously when you want to search for a client, you're starting your search over here and searching through. So let's dive into the dashboards in a little bit more detail. Forms should load dynamically from the ATO based on your lodgement list. Once you've started working on the forms, they will be in a drafting state. You complete the forms, you send them out to sign. The signed forms come back. And that's where you can just typically batch tick, sign and lodge. Now in this case, I can't sign and lodge because you'll notice that this form has got a stop on it. You can see here it's got a clock on it, which means that it's got a future aligned date for lodgement. So you can set a future date to lodge on, so that just means it wouldn't lodge at this early stage. Finally, once the forms are lodged, they'll show up in the lodge box, and you'll be able to hover over them and see the status. Typically, I guess most of you are going to be working mostly with ITRs, so if we hover over that, you can see the ATO is at the stage of the balancing account. So most of these are balancing account. Once in a while, you're going to get a variation between the outcome of assessment and the tax form. You can see there's a variation in this instance of $21. Now, what is the variation between? It's between the outcome of assessment. You can activate this outcome of assessment if you want to use it, which is really useful because it will send this email to your client with the details about their taxable income and the refunds or payables on it. So that is essentially your equivalent of your notice of assessment, though it's a digital variant and it's called the outcome of assessment. So if you turn it on, as I showed you, turn it on there, then in the lodged, you can come and you could filter the lodged by, say, ITR. You would find your ITRs, and you could see which ones have been sent. Most of them are going to have been sent, right? So let's just see if we can find one here where, okay, so this notice of assessment is sent, and if we were to click into it, it's going to take us into that notice of assessment. And if we go into the estimate over here, we then have the ability to go to the little estimate compare button, and we can compare the outcome of assessment values with the taxable income on the tax form. So remember that outcome of assessment is essentially the same as your notice of assessment. And if we scroll through, you can see this comparative value all the way through until finally we see that in this case the refund was exactly matched by the outcome of assessment that came through from the ATO. So the system will automatically send out that email with the information that there's an assessment that's been processed by the ATO and that it matches what we estimated. So that's all done through that email sending out system that I just described. Okay. Now, if we go back to, let's go back to dashboards. There are also dashboards here for your reports. So primarily you're going to be working with financial statements, and I'll show you how to work with the financial statements. It's a little bit more simple: draft, complete, out to sign, and then you can publish those completed financial statements. You've got the same for work papers, even more simple. It's drafting, completed, finished. And then there's a work tab if you want to use the work tab from the point of view of the wording describes the state of the objects that you're working on, tax forms, reports, and work papers, as to whether they're in progress, on review, out to sign. Okay, so this is really to keep track of what is on review. So you can use the work tab for managing what is on review when you're working within a team. Now let's have a look at the client box section. This is typically where you're going to come and add a client. Very easy to add a client. I'm not going to show you how because it's elementary, but you add a client, the clients are going to show up in the list here. You can also create your client groups. Client groups are really good for families. So in the case that you have family groups, You might have a family group with a whole lot of entities in it. We click on that family group. We click on clients. You see the name of the group, and then you see the entities in the group. And of course, the forms, the reports, and the work papers are all for this specific group. Also out of here, you can do things like, for instance, you can associate clients with specific owners. So the owner is going to be a team member in the team who is the partner or principal of that client. This is typically only used if you're working in firms where you've got a hierarchy of, I guess, principal or multiple principals, essentially a partnership, if you want to express owner. And there is a reason why you might want to use owner, and we will get to that later when we get to the document signing. You can also do things like you can add this client to a group. Okay, now where are the groups coming from? The groups are just coming straight out of here. As I said, and as I explained, these are your client groups. Any of those clients that leave, you can archive them just by clicking this little box here. You can archive the client. And then also what you've got is the ability to associate a given client with a team. So you can associate a client with a team, and the use of that is if you're in a firm with multiple teams, then when you come to the new section here, you could go, well, show me all the forms assigned, all the different client forms assigned to the Bronson team, and then it'll narrow it down to all the forms that are associated with the Bronson team. So that is all done through clients and groups and archives. So don't forget ticking and then just assigning or unassigning. That's really the use here. Also from over here, you can export your clients to CSV or Excel, and the same for the relationships if you want to reuse those that information in some secondary system. So for those who have just joined, I will take questions at the end, and I'm going to go quite fast through this, and there will be a recording later, so don't worry too much about it. Now, the next thing we want to do is we actually want to work on a tax form. So you'll notice that I'm going to search out of here for the client. And we're going to select the client. Look, this is just a dummy entity. I've put this form here already, so I'm going to add a new one. Now, what I mentioned previously is that in the forms, the new forms will already be loaded from the ATO based on your lodgement list. So typically, I wouldn't need to do this, right? But because this is just a dummy client that I want to show you, then I'm going to add the form. And I added the wrong one there, so that's all right. I just go back, add the form, individual tax return 2025, create and pre-fill. So that's your sort of starting point if you're adding the form, and you certainly would add a form if it's a client that you've just added into your system today, but all the other client tax forms should already be loaded in the dashboard based on your lodgement list. Now you'll notice that what will happen is the dashboard of this client will activate the certain sections associated with the client, the relevant sections. So you'll notice that most of the sections are actually disabled because the only information that is in the database, since there's no pre-fill, is there must have been a business from the previous year and there's spousal information. That simply means that when we're in the tax form navigating through, you've got your master navigators up here. You've got your minor navigators down here. So you'll see I don't have any income at all to report, but that's because 4 little squares, if I turn on PAYG and I turn on interest and I turn on dividends, you'll see them all turn on, right? So that just means you can now come in and then you can fill in the worksheets for these different objects, right? You could put in the information. But of course, for these types of things, you'd be expecting the pre-fill. And I'm going to show you in a minute the pre-fills. The deductions, same sort of thing. There's no deductions evident here, so you need to turn them on. 4 little squares, just look through the list, work-related expenses. That turns on, and then you can come and put in your details. You'll notice there's already an asset in here, which is already brought in from our legacy depreciation module. I do have a separate training video dedicated specifically to our tools and reports and work papers. I'm not going to be showing you anything about these much today, except to say that when we initially built LodgeIT, we had depreciation module over here that you could fill in, and you could see for this client, someone's come and filled in the depreciation module. and then you'd have these reports over here. Okay, now that was how we built it initially, but then what we realized is, well, a lot of our users wanted the forms built, or the depreciation built right into the form, which is essentially what we ended up doing. So now, don't use the external module. Always, for the tax forms, just simply add your assets directly into the form. Okay. So it's a historical asset, 2022, 3,500. Of course, there's going to be an opening written down value, and you need to put in the rest of the information, right? So you'll need this from your legacy system. If you're coming out of, look, if you've got long lists that you want to bring in, you can always import. We currently enable conversion from HandySoft, HandyTax and HandyLedger. So we've got a tool that allows you to do the conversion, reach out to our support team, and then you can accelerate importing your assets from legacy systems. So now you'll see that that asset is just added directly in there, right? Now, if you've been using LodeiT for a while, then you'd migrate your assets in from the legacy depreciation module. Immediate write-off assets won't import, but everything else will. And then those assets will be brought in on the same basis that I added my computer. Okay, so you'll notice that it actually dropped my computer. So you want to do the migration first. But in your case, you shouldn't have any assets to migrate because you're going to put them straight into the tax forms from scratch. So you won't have to worry about that migration from the legacy module. It's just important for you to know that. The rest of the form, you know, as I said, activating different sections. And now what I will do is just let me just set this up. I'm getting a tax form ready so I can sort of show you inside of it. Now, when I say show you inside of it, I will have it so that it's pre-filled and ready to go. So let me just get this ready. I'm just doing it on another screen here, just so that you've got a sense of how this is actually working. Okay, so I'll just tuck that in there. Now, this form is live, and you'll notice that it's got our pre-fill details. It's pre-filled, and again, when you're looking for errors in the form, probably the starting point, you just hit the validate button. You're looking for errors. You get this ready color. You need to resolve these errors. And then validate again. Now, the main salary and wage, we need to deal with that. Okay, so maybe he's a drama teacher. And then we can do our final validation, and then we can complete the form, right? So that is essentially the process for working through here. Now, you'll notice now that this was the last error, and hopefully when I click validate, that is now gone, yes. And you can see we've just got the yellow, which is the warnings. So, you know, clicking on any of these will take you to the sections of the form where you're going to have to think about what is happening in terms of this form. Is it ready to go? Whether any of these are actually important or not is another question. So that is how you would there. And then the next step is you would just, of course, you could try your ATO benchmark, which will help you find any overclaims, or at least warn you if the system, if you've got deductions in there that might exceed what would be normal for that kind of taxpayer. And then you've got the ability to complete the form and send it out for signing. So you can't complete the form until you've just got the yellow colors here, and we'll certainly I guess I'm not going to take you through this step now, but I'll show you that when we get to the financial statements. So let's keep going on this. Back over here, we're going to now work on a company. So we'll work on this company here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to import the financial statements. Now, when I'm importing the financial statements, I want to show you using Excel. The reason that I'm using Excel is because It just means I don't have to jump into the other system. Though when you try, make sure you try to connect and import from these different accounting apps. This is just an easy way. If you don't have any accounting software, you can start in Excel, and that's why I'm showing it to you like this. So what we have is inside our system, we have the templates that you can download, and then you can choose and import the file once you've filled it in. So I've actually already filled it in. You can see above this row, I've added my rows above here with the values. And you'll notice it's composed of a profit and loss with 2 comparative periods. And then the balance sheet the same again. Balance sheet with two comparative periods. And we've got this test on the end, because when you're working with Excel, you've got to be particularly careful. Very easy to make mistakes. So of course our balance sheet balances, our current earnings are coming from the net profit. Our retained earnings are rolling forward from the previous year. So we know that there's some kind of integrity to this set of financials. Of course, you have to do that manually when you're working with Excel. So other thing you'll notice is all the values in here are positive, but for the exceptions. So here's the first exception, closing stock in the direct cost section, essentially opening stock plus purchases minus closing stock. That's a credit. It's got a minus sign. There's a bank overdraft in here. As I said, old bank. It's a bank overdraft. It's in the asset section. It's got a minus sign. It's actually a liability, right? And it's just, this is the way that we present things. Same with the accumulated depreciation. You'd be familiar with that, minus. So cost minus the accumulated minus sign with the credit. And then when you get into the liability section, it's the other way around. So it's actually the debits that have the minus sign. So the ATO integrated account with a minus sign means that that is actually an asset, but it's in the liability section. And then finally you get to the equity, where your dividends are a debit with a minus sign. That's a debit. Everything else in here are credits. The whole thing balances. You can save it, and then you just choose it and import that file. Okay, just got to find it and upload. So you can certainly give that a try. You'll have your balance sheet and your profit and loss in here inside of LodeiT. And the next step is to go to the Accounts tab and manage your classifications. So you'll see here how NAB 5510, which is the NAB 5510, you don't see the value, but you know it's in the current assets. That that's a bank account, right? That's a bank account. And you can see how it's classified in this tree. Right, so that's our category tree. Now, it might be the case that that gets misclassified by the machine learning algorithm and it puts it to inventory. In that case, you as the human operator must fix it. You can do that just by selecting it from the tree. Or the other way you can do it, let's just say we'll put it to other current assets. You could just go, oh, okay, well, that's just bank account. And just use predictive text to select and classify like that. So you need to do your classifications, and you need to link certain accounts together. You can see here that we've got our accumulated depreciation linked to our at cost account. So there's the motor vehicle at cost, classified to motor vehicle at cost, motor vehicle accumulated, classified to motor vehicle accumulated, and we're linking these two together. The reason we're doing that is so when we generate the reports are in the correct sequence. I'll show you that just now once we get to reporting. So just remember this. Okay, so everything is classified in here. Same thing on the liabilities. You're linking those, the unexpired interest with unrepaid component. Same thing again. Well, there's two in this case, so this is more relevant and more understandable. So if I'm linking the hire purchase of Mercedes and the current, then it's got to be the unrepaid hire purchase Mercedes and current, right? So you're linking together. In the revenues and expenses, you've got these tags. The tags are for you to select tax facts. So it might be the case that for these sales, we treat these as non-assessable. Now, these tags, in most cases, you're never going to use them. It's going to be quite infrequent that you use them. And as you can see, the tags in here are bundled together. So they're all the tags from the company, trust, and partnership tax forms. They're all here. So, of course, given that this is a company, you would never use the primary production tag because there's no concept of primary production reporting in a company. Needless to say, the tags are there, and they definitely will speed up your auto-filling of forms if you get used to using them appropriately. So I'm just going to give you sort of a hint for how that works today. Bank charges, Well, maybe that was some kind of entertainment and it was non-deductible. So we've got two things that we've tagged here: non-assessable, non-deductible. Once you've classified your accounts, then you can go to work. Typically, you're going to get started with your work papers. Very easy. I'm not going to go through the work papers in any detail today, other than to say this is pretty much how you do it. You select your accountant and your reviewer, and you've got yourself a set of work papers that you can then append and attach reference documents to. So NAB 5510, maybe from the library you're going to bring in maybe this is a bank statement, and maybe on the banks, when you open up the bank statement, you hopefully will find that this is the balance. So the expected balance is what comes off your worksheet, and hopefully that's right. The accountant ticks it if you're using this kind of process, and then if the accountant is complete, and this is now in a review stage. So now the reviewer comes along, it's completed, or if the reviewer is looking in the work tab, it's now on review. So they can come in, they can open it up, and they can look through, double check everything. Once they're happy with everything, they can just give it the final approval. So pretty simple, basic work papers. Where are you bringing your documents in? You're either uploading from your desktop, or you can store documents in our file store. So you've got free file storage in here, and you can upload documents. When you're uploading your documents, ignore this file type. It's irrelevant. You just go file upload, whatever. Maybe you got something like that you're uploading. You're just simply saying what category it is. So if this was a legal document, maybe a minute a meeting, then it's got a date type of instant because it's signed as at a point in time. Or let's say that it was a financial statement. So you've got different types of financial reports, but if it's a full financial statement report, it's going to have a duration time frame, and maybe it's got a typical financial year time frame like that, and then you can save it off like that. Okay. That's now saved, and you'll see the dates, and this is all searchable. So you can search through the documents there. Okay, so you've imported, so what have we done so far? We've imported, we've classified, we've built our work papers, and now we'll do our custom reports. So again, I do a separate session on the details of the financial reports. This is really quite a demo that I'll show you today, and I'm not going to show you the paid version, which includes notes, export to Word, page breaks, and a whole lot of other advanced features. The free version is probably quite enough. You'll notice here that I've got a lot of templates that I built through a lot of demos. But for yours, you're just going to have these two here. It's either trading or non-trading. The difference is either, if you've got cost of goods or revenue, then it's a trading entity. Okay. Of course, you can change that name and create. Now, this is just building the reports with what we had originally, just imported. So, if we looked at the balance sheet here, we're going to see that it's got that NAB 5510 under the bank. See the categories? Now, with a little bit of editing and modifying in here, I'll show you some of the tricks. You could roll things up. You can drop in and, if you want to make changes. So whatever changes you want to make, you can make them directly into the report. You'll notice updated there and there. Anything can be changed, right? Anything in here can be changed, just not the values. Comprehensive income, you might wind that up. Investment revenue, you might not like the extra categories here, so we'll take that category out. Now it's just other revenue. You'll notice the indenting. If you don't like the indenting, gear wheel, tick and tick again, it'll left justify. And if you want to roll things up, roll them up. If you want to lower them all the way down and show the guts of it to see what actually was in the Excel, you can. And then if you don't like certain categories, just remove the category. Right? So you can go all the way through. When you're happy with it, complete that. Once it's completed, it'll be showing as completed over here. And moreover, it'll also be shown as completed over here. Right? You can open it up from any of the dashboards. And now you'll want to know, well, how did my name get in there as a signature? How that happened is the little face and the account, and I loaded my signature there. That's the first thing I did. The second thing, I went to the gear wheel, I went to the settings and the default signatory, and I just selected my name from my team members. I'm the signatory. This is for a firm where it's just one person, the principal, right? But if you've got a partnership, then you need to use the client owner as signatory, and moreover, you then need to go the clients like I showed you before, and every client must be assigned an owner, one of the partners, for that other method to work. Okay, so that's how you get your name in there. So we're going back to that custom report, opening that up, and the next thing you want to know is, well, how do you get your directors' names in here? Or in the case of a partnership, partners, or in the case of a trustees. How you do that is you need to go to the relationships, and you can see here we've got the directoring. You must have a director. Directors are signatories. You need to add that relationship for the company, and that is James Henry Doe. He is the director. Okay, so now James is the director, and he's the guy that obviously his name is on that sign. Now, if you want to use the e-sign request, you can. So request e-sign. Now, you can add extra documents in here if you want. This is what will be going, and let's just work our way through. So next, it's going to go to James Doe. We won't even use a verification method. We'll use none to keep it simple. Now, of course, I could change whether I want to send it to someone else or I want to send it to James. And then next, it's going to pick up the names and send. So that exact same method will work with your tax forms. Now, that is now showing as out to sign, right? It's out to sign on the client, and it's out to sign on the dashboard. It's out to sign. Now, what will happen let's just log into my Gmail. We'll have a look there. Okay, so it should come in a second. Give that a second. We should get our... where is it? Let me just make sure it's sent to the right email. Pretty sure it did. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, so it's arrived. It'll come with your logo, your colors, the details of your firm. It'll come from your email address, and then the client will just read it. Hi, we've prepared your tax form. If it comes with a tax form, it's going to say what the taxable income is and the refund, and then review and sign. So now the client can just scroll through, have a look at these financials, make sure they're happy with everything. And then when they are, they can get started and just click to sign. Okay, whatever they're going to put as their signature, continue and agree. So that the client will get another email after this, and moreover, if we come back over here, we'll notice that this will move from out to sign. It'll move, it's still sitting in and out to sign, right? I've reloaded a few times. It takes a few seconds for the signals to travel. Now it's signed, right? So that's signed. Now, if you want to publish your forms, you've got to do it through the Work tab. So that's now waiting. That's waiting. You see it's signed. And what I will do is I will batch ticket and publish that report. So if you want to publish your reports, you can do it like that. Archiving, I don't know why we build archiving. A lot of people who come from zero ask for it. I've never seen the point of bothering to archive something if it's been finished. But anyway, we put it in there. So I think it's there if you make a mistake with something and you don't want it to be in your normal flow, you can just archive it. But anyway, it's a possibility and a feature you can use. So let's go back to that client. Now, of course, I wouldn't normally work on a business. I wouldn't work on a company like this. I'd do everything at the same time. I'd build the tax forms, the financials, and the work papers. I'd do it all in one kind of flow. But for this one, you saw I did the work papers for the demo. I did the customer or the financial reports for the demo. It's published. You're noting here that it's now published. And then I've done the form, and now I'm going to do the form, right? Let's take that form out and start from scratch. So we're going to add in that company tax return for 25. We know that we've got the data in because we just imported and classified it. And now you'll see the system will turn on the sections of the form just like the individual tax return. So let's work our way through. We're into the form. Same as the individual tax return, you've got your master navigator, and you've got your minor navigators underneath, but moreover, if you need to turn other sections on, you can. So if you know there was capital gains, now if there were capital gains in the accounts and you classified them, then this would automatically turn on, right? But in this case, you can see I've just turned it on there. So turn it off, right, it goes. Turn it on, and you got capital gains if you needed to report capital gains. That's all driven through there. You can see what's turned on. In a company, you're probably not going to need, a lot of these you're never going to use. License club, pool development, retirement, research, probably never going to use them, or very infrequently. The main thing, though, is that the main section of the form is all filled from whatever got imported from our classification exercise. And you can see here all of the different line items that we had in the Excel file that got classified into these categories. So all other expenses, and of course from there into the reconciliation section. Company, trust and partnership, you've got to be particularly careful with the reconciliation section, understand how it works, always check it, because the system will do things like, for instance, you can see it's treated the accounting depreciation as non-deductible, and moreover the bank charges, if you remember, if I come over here, you remember I treated this as non-deductible. So I'm just going to take that out so that when I refresh back over here, it won't reflect there as non-deductible anymore, because I just wanted to demo that. The same over here with the other income not included in the assessable income. There's the sales, which I said were non-assessable. Same thing again, open in another link, and then let's just take that out, and then we can come back here and refresh, and that will no longer be treated as non-assessable income. But what we do have here, which is particularly important to note, is that the interest is treated as non-assessable income. And you go, why is that? It's actually it's a decreasing adjustment in interest. The reason for that is because if we have a look in interest, you'll see the gross interest on the accounts is there because it came in the Excel. But what we don't have is we don't have the tax value. So we don't have the 1546, which we need to manually add. We manually add for the following 5 types of income: interest, dividends, capital gains, trust distribution, and partnership share. So for those 5 income types, it's particularly important that you pay attention to manually adding the income, even if there's values in the accounts, because the accounting values are just simply treated as reconciling components. You need to manually put it in. The reason for that is because it's not so much the case with interest, but with dividends, it's a good possibility that the taxable value might be greater than or less than the accounting value, and there might be TFN, and there might be franking credits, and etc. that goes on with those kinds of income. So it's impossible for us to pick up everything from the accounts. So rather than sort of partially pick it up and let you get, just accept what came from the accounts, we actually ask you to manually key the values in for those 5 income types, though noting that if this was this is a company, and say that this company was receiving dividends, interest, or capital gains from another company that had been prepared on the LodeiT system, then the taxable values will inject in and I won't have to manually key. But that's the only time that you'll actually get the taxable values coming in, right? Other than that, you've got to manually deal with it, which is exactly what I've done now. And as part of the example, I've set that to 1600, the taxable, greater than the accounting, because I want to show you that when there's a difference, either way, it's going to reflect in the recon section. So there is your other assessable income, the increase in interest, which is the taxable value being greater than the accounting value. Also here, non-deductible expenses, it will automatically recognize depreciation. You don't even have to tag it. The accounting depreciation will be treated as non-deductible, exactly in line with the way this company tax return is built, because on the flip side, the tax depreciation is coming at item F and the capital works at item I, and that is flowing through from the depreciation module here. Now, the same as with the individual tax return, as I said previously, we built the depreciation modules external. We're leaving the the external depreciation module for accounting basis depreciation purposes, and we're saying that for tax depreciation, do it all in the tax form, which, if you're using our system before, you're going to migrate the assets in. It won't migrate immediate write-off and preliminary expenses because there's no spot for those. but it'll import your low value pools, capital works, capital allowance, etc. And you'll see it actually bring the underlying assets in. So same as that individual tax return, if you want to add an asset in the form, you just quick add, right? So, unless you've got a need to do depreciation for accounting, do all your depreciation in the tax forms for all the different tax forms, right? And then you always have your depreciation section, which is your tax values. Your tax values come in here at F and I, as I said, and the non-deductible accounting value gets excluded at W. Financial information, all filled. Now, you'll notice that it's auto-filled the franking account, it's auto-filled the dividend and interest schedule. How to do all that? Because we've got tools for the franking account and the share register embedded in the system. Now, we have yesterday recorded the full video on using tools and reports and work papers and depreciation. So there is a full video floating around for all of that. It's in our help guides and also at our LodgeIT YouTube channel. So let's keep going. Financial information, tax calc is going to be carried out. Now this tax calc is carried out as what is it carried out as? A base rate entity? Yes, so 25%. If it's not ticked, then the tax calc won't have that. And moreover, the tax calc will find, any of your franking credits, everything will be brought in correctly. And if you click here, if this was a live client, it would bring in the PAYG installments from the ATO and you get a proper estimate. So that's our company completed, right? So what did we do? We started in the financials tab. We did our import, we did our classification, we did our work papers, our reports, and our form. And I showed you how you can send these things out for digital signing on the way through. So now, folks, I think what we can have a look at is we can have a look at the settings for a client. Every client you should double check before you start work on it that the settings are complete. So in this case, this is a company, but these are the entity types that you can have in LodgeIT, very basic. And look, if you've got something like it's like a not-for-profit or whatever, just treat it as a company, right? If you don't know what else to use and you need to have it in the system. Always be careful with your branches, ATO systems for whatever reason. Sometimes you'll have 002. So if you're trying to load your activity statements, so, forms system does a very good job with activity statements. It does a particularly good job importing from, so let's just see if I've got a new activity statement. And if I filter that down to activity statements, let me see if I've got anything that I could import. Okay, so yeah, why don't we go to this one? And we'll have a look through. You'll see that this is not pre-filled. Oh, it is filled already. But if you're using QuickBooks, you can just click the import button and do the import like that, right? So you can import directly into the tax form from QuickBooks, though if it was not QuickBooks, then you can just manually key the values. Then you've just got your pre-lodge and complete, which works the same as any other form. So activity statements are easy to use. And as I was saying, I got sort of distracted on that. We were working our way through the settings, and I was talking about the fact that if your activity statement won't load, first thing to check is your branch. Maybe just try 002. That's often what the issue is. You'll need ABN, whatever you need, make sure it's there. If you start working in the form and it throws an error, you're going to have to come back and put your settings in here anyway, so you better to get started. Small business entity, this button here will drive base rate entity calculations across the top of across the franking account. So if you are going to use our franking account and share register, be sure to tick this if the entity is a base rate entity. So everything's filled. Contact details, so make sure your contact details are filled. Contact details are easy to select out of the system. It's just one of the clients, and the email is going to belong to one of the clients. So you just type and it'll find it, right? So it's a nice predictive text search. Same thing with the addresses, and then finally People is not for clients, people's for third parties like bank managers, bookkeepers. If you are managing the activity statements for the client, be sure to tick that. Otherwise, the forms are not going to load dynamically into the dashboard. You'll notice that as I was showing you, all my new forms are always dynamically loading into the dashboard because the ATO systems know to feed the LodeiT system based on my lodgement list. So these are my activity statements, right? The activity statements are only there because I went and ticked that little box against that given client. So if you're doing activity statements and not setting it up right in terms of not saying, yes, I'm going to do the activity statements, you can't expect the forms to dynamically load into the LodeiT system. Contact details on front covers. If you want to carry out client verification for new clients, you can store the evidence in here with your notes and your documents. If you are going to use our legacy depreciation module, the depreciation module showed over here and here, which are the accounting-based depreciation modules. If you want to use that module, you need to activate it for each client, and the method of activation is to set the start date. The start date is always the first day after the last day that you've got a depreciation report. So if you've got a depreciation report to 30 June 2024, then your date here is going to be 1 July 2024. That would be your start date, because that would then allow you to put in your opening written down values when you're in the tools and the depreciation module for the given assets. So be careful to set a start date. If you set the wrong start date, you add your groups, you add your asset groups, you add your assets. There's no way to fix it other than deleting everything and starting from scratch. So be careful with the start date. Every team you can set, every client you can set team members that you want to have private access to this client. I don't care on this one, so it's just public. But if you want to go private, then you can say who will have access. The client owner is always going to be the administrator who set up the system, and the other assignees, whomever that person invites in to this client. Right? Import. You saw that I imported from Excel. I didn't connect to one of these three systems. And we try to make it super easy so that you can literally import into LodeiT from any software. So we support a lot of different softwares. Not all of them have APIs. And moreover, as I said, if you don't have any software, then just use Excel in the manner that I just showed you, which is very easy. So that's pretty much your client settings, right? Notes, of course, we give you a notes module. You can store notes against clients. When you add notes, you can choose tags. So you might say, well, I'm using a mail out tag. And then you've got the ability to say, okay, well, I sent out a parcel today, and save on that, right? So parcel went out. This one is pinned, right? Noticing that one's pinned, so it sits above that one. So you got notes. Now, what have we done so far? I've taken you through the settings for a client, the notes, the relationships, the files. We showed you the import of the financials and the classification of the financials. I said that the work papers, tools and reports, I've got a separate video for, though I did give you a bit of a demo of the work papers. We had a look at the custom reports, building out financials. I didn't show you that in custom reports we do have legal documents so that you can put together things like, letters of engagement, minutes of meetings, all, trust distribution, all kinds of things like that. You can use the legal docs, which autofill with the client details, so it's really useful. We went through the forms for individual, an activity statement, and a company, and I explained the work tab where you use this to keep track of what's on review. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to jump into our settings, and in our settings, we're going to go to so this is the settings for the system, right? So we're going to the system settings. Now, I showed you the default signatory. I explained you'd need to tick this if you're in a partnership. Client defaults. What is the default for the method of verification on the email? You saw that you can toggle it anyway, but the default I've set is date of birth. Branding, upload your own logo, because that'll go on the front covers, it'll go on the emails, it'll go all over the place. You really want to have your own logo. Notifications, you've got some options around emails, so attaching a signed document copy to an email notification. Client reminders, every 3 days is the default for 7 totals before it gives up. And then email templates, right? So these are the templates. If you don't like our templates, then you can just put in your own template. But you can see, just make sure you keep the little whizzy things, these little tildes, because otherwise it won't pick up the details in the form properly. So be careful what you mess around with. Email system, you want to connect your own mail server. You'll notice it rides out on info@Noble Accounting. So the team has access to that info account and they can see there, because you will get emails going there if notice of assessment don't match the estimate. It'll actually send an email saying something doesn't match. You guys better check it out. So you should keep a track of that. Obviously, it'll write out the mail when you send it out for digital signing to your clients. If you always want to have a CC for the mail going out, you can set it. And then you've got some extra options there. Client sync, if you're using QuickBooks Online Accounting for your own personal bookkeeping, you can synchronize it with the system. So that's QBOA. Outcome of assessment, your outcome of assessment, I talked to you about this before. You want to tick this if you want it to work for those individual tax return clients that get assessed. It'll automatically send out the outcome of assessment based on if the estimate is matched with the outcome. You're doing fee from refund, you've got an option here. Export, you can export all kinds of things from LodeiT. And then your software ID, you can't use LodeiT without copying your software ID, going into the ATO Access Manager, searching for Lodge space it, and pasting that software ID against LodeiT, or just calling the ATO and giving them the software ID against LodeiT. That essentially connects LodeiT with the ATO systems. Now, from there, in terms about learning about the system, gear wheel, you've got the getting started. You really, at the getting started, you could see here, I've sort of activated all the main things that I want to get started on. There's a video guide, and there is our knowledge base, which is quite extensive at this stage. It's got user guides from the perspective of the sign-up process, QuickBooks Online account users and what they have, because we have a relationship with QuickBooks, and their accountants will be using the system. So you can connect with QuickBooks quite well, like I showed you with the activity statement, importing from QuickBooks. So if you're looking for a really great software, I do always say QuickBooks is equivalent of Xero, but cheaper and probably in some ways better. eSign, what you want to do is you want to come in here, you want to just scroll through and get a sense of what we have in the help guides. You'll notice each tax form has quite comprehensive detail in there, right? So all the way through, there's like over 150 articles just about different sections of the individual tax return. Similar kind of thing for the company, similar kind of thing for the trust, similar kind of thing for the partnership and super fund, and so on. And then right down here, we've got our financial reporting module, how that all works across the different entities, the integrations with QuickBooks and Xero and MyOb and ATO Mate and ATO Smart Docs and BGL and so on. Importing financials, you saw me doing it. This is, classification of the line items, we do have a LodeiT Smart Excel utility. It's a plugin in Excel that can help you get accounts out of sort of those accounting softwares that LodeiT doesn't recognize instantly. General accounting facts which are relevant to LodeiT, effective accounting techniques, and moreover, let me just move that out the way. Moreover, if we come in here, we've got our tax research assistant. So you can certainly come and ask questions in here. This is a large language model. You can see someone's asked a question there. Give them an answer, and of course it also gives you the references where it got the information out of the ATO systems, and you can jump off to the ATO section of the tax form to read about that, or you could just get a summary on, right, okay, well, what's the summary on that, and it'll crunch out a summary for that particular part or reference that it gave you. So you've got some information, you've got a useful tool there that we give you access to. Anytime we give new features to the system, we release. So you see, we normally do a release every couple of months with a whole lot of new features. You can certainly scroll through that and see what our releases were in the past. And folks, that in a nutshell, is the system overall. So as I said, I didn't cover the tools, the reports in any great detail, or the work papers, including the depreciation. I've now got a good video on the whole session of my session from yesterday. So that's on our YouTube channel. You search LodeiT, and it's probably the most recent video there. Folks, any questions? Otherwise, only other thing I'll say is, look, if you get stuck, obviously try to find out how to do it yourself, because it'll help you if you learn how to use our help guides. But then don't hesitate to hit contact us. If you can, always take a screenshot so our team can see where your pain point is. LodeiT is a complex system with lots of different parts in it. So if you're vague with your question, there's no chance our team members will know where you're asking. That's why we don't do phone support, because phone support drives people crazy, because they don't know what you're looking at and you're trying to explain it. And that's a really low bandwidth way of sharing information. We are about to release our AI bot, which will give you more of a sort of a direct help experience, like having a chat partner on the other side to help you work your way through the problem. So that's not far off from release. But in the meantime, when you do ask your question, it is going to a human. Be sensitive to the fact that unless you make it clear what your problem is, they're not going to understand it. So make it as clear as possible. If you're not clear, you're going to get a question. And if you're still not clear, you're going to get another question with an opportunity to set up a Teams meeting like this, where you can share your team with one of our team members. You can share your screen, and they can help you through the problem space. Now, that's where you really want to make sure you get a headset, right? So these days, a headset's probably $15-20 or something. So make sure you got audio on your PC. Now, folks, that's pretty much the end of the demo. Any questions? Because I've got a hard stop in 7 minutes. So any questions, folks? You can just unmute yourself if you want, or just throw it in the chat window. No? Okay. Okay. Well, look, folks, as I said,
Hi.
if you get... Oh, yeah. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Devika.
Hi,
Fire away.
Andrew. The system is so useful. I just have one question. Whether we can download all the clients from the LodeiT, is there any report we can take from the LodeiT, like client list?
Yeah, sure. So you just go clients, export clients to CSV, or export clients to Excel.
Okay. Yeah.
And it'll spit out the report. Yep.
Yeah. It contains all the details, like correspondent
Yes.
address and everything.
Yeah, yeah, everything. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew.
No worries. Any other questions, folks? No?
Sorry, Andrew.
Oh, yeah, one more. Mokshin. Oh, Mokshin was on the demo yesterday, right?
Yes. Just
Yeah,
a quick
how
one,
you go?
Andrew. If I've added a client and I've made a mistake and I want to delete that client, is it easy enough to delete? I know in zero.
Okay, so look, you don't delete clients in LodeiT. The reason for that is you delete a client, and then you delete the wrong client, and we'd have lots of people calling us and saying, I deleted my client, help me get my data back. What you can do is you can just archive the client. You just click that archive box, and your client will go into the archive. But if you make a mistake, put the client in the archive, you can always bring the client back.
Oh, okay. And then you can make a new client in that, even if that client is in the archive. Yeah, got it.
Yep. Yep. But I mean, it's easiest just to fix the client. If you make a blunder on a client, you can easily just open it and make the changes. But yeah, there will be times when you've got clients that leave you, or you just don't want to work with them or whatever, and then you can just archive them.
Archive them. Thanks, mate. Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions, folks? Because as I said, if not, don't hesitate to go into our knowledge base, have a good look around, and search for LodeiT on the YouTube channel. When you're in the LodeiT on the YouTube channel, have a look in the playlists. And also when you're on LodeiT on our website, you've got the resources, you've got the things that you'd want to know. Is if you go to the reconciliation tools here, this is actually quite a good spot. You can come and learn about the tools, all with the little videos. These little YouTube videos, each one's about 3 minutes long. So I will actually throw this URL into the mix there. So just copy that URL, open it, click on it, open it, it's in the chat, and you can have a look through there, and those those little videos are quite useful. But as I said, help guides is probably the way to go.